Right, it's a big story I want to discuss with you tonight. We all know, of course, the situation in the Israel-Gaza conflict, but I'm asking tonight specifically about how that is impacting here on the streets of Britain, because apparently, according to security sources, the terror threat level has recently been raised in France and Belgium following separate attacks there. We've got a situation where, according to one report, half of British Jews have said that they've considered leaving the UK due to a rise in anti-Semitism. And security source has been talking to us at GB News as well, saying that they believe a terror attack in the UK linked to the conflict in Gaza is likely only a matter of time. Goodness me. Peter Hitchens, what do you make of some of this?
Well, what do all these things mean? I have no idea. I live on the basis that it's quite possible there could be a terrorist attack of some kind in this country at any time, but I doubt very much whether it would have a direct link with events of this sort. Also, there's a great tendency in this country to mischaracterize events of horrible violence as terrorist, when in fact, when you examine them, they turn out to be people with serious mental problems, generally following drug abuse, running amok, who are then classified as terrorists, in my view, mistakenly, and we're all told that this is some kind of terrorist. They don't make sense as terrorist attacks, many of these events. The people who actually commit them don't really know what they're doing. The acts themselves couldn't conceivably advance any cause that these people might possibly espouse. They make no sense. They're not part of any coordinated campaign. There is a tendency in this country to exaggerate the existence and the nature of terror. So I say it can't happen or won't happen. It might well happen, but I doubt very much the capacity of our vaunted security services to know if they're going to happen. I think these are vast and expensive organizations, almost completely immune from any kind of examination, do have some reason to, how shall I put this, advocate their own existence by spreading material of this sort. But I think we should be a bit more sceptical about it, honestly. To the extent that people can prepare for terrorist actions, we should prepare for them. But half the point of terrorism is to make us frightened. And if we spend all our time being frightened without even being attacked, then we are very much doing the job of the terrorists, aren't we?
I'm surprised that you don't think that the actions in Gaza would make people or certain people do something on the streets in their name.
I don't see the logical link between the two. Why would that be
Because
so?
people don't appreciate innocent people in Palestine having bombs rain down on their head 24/7, and they would expect the government here to be pushing back and trying to do something to stop that activity, and they would perhaps hold this government directly accountable for not doing that, I would imagine.
Honestly, Britain has really quite a small influence over these matters in any case. If there were international terrorist bodies thinking of taking action over this, which there might be, I don't really see why Britain would be at the top of their lists.
I don't think it'd be international activities, but I think lone wolves or whatever they're called. But anyway, let me bring you in, I called you Bastani then.
Why not?
Aaron, for your thoughts.
Sounds like school. I think that's right to an extent. I think it would be more individuals, lone wolves. I don't think anybody seriously is saying that Hamas or Hezbollah have a wing operating in the UK against the IRA during the Troubles. Organised.
It's a new thing on me if they do.
Ideologically coherent, precisely, well-equipped. I think there probably is a slightly greater chance of something like that happening because so many individuals who are very atomised perhaps have a sense of grievance and they would obviously be doing something appalling with it. But like you say, Michelle, the context is things are happening in Europe, so maybe it's more plausible. What's of more interest to me is actually this question about British Jews being scared. Because as somebody who's from a minority, I'm half Iranian, I have to say Britain is one of the best countries in the world to not be from the majority culture. My view. To not be white British, you can still do a tremendous amount in this country. You can have a great life, you can get on, you can have a family, you can be left alone, you can think and do what you want, broadly speaking. And I find it very puzzling that so many people in this country who say they love this country, care for this country, respect this country, and I'm not talking about British Jews, I'm talking about commentators discussing this, say they're all scared, they're all in fear, and that's because this is such an awful country which doesn't look after minorities. That simply isn't true. Now, do those same people have legitimate, justified concerns about what's happening? Of course they do. But I think there's a bit of overkill going on if all of a sudden we're saying that for minorities, for Jewish people, or somebody else might say for black people or for Iranian people. Britain is this awful place to be, and that simply is not the case.
I don't think...
We're very tolerant, we're very fair, and I think we're very just.
I don't think, Aaron, that's what's being said. I think what's being said is that Jews in this country are increasingly nervous about their position, and there's reason from history for Jews to be nervous when people start shouting anti-Semitic slogans in the street, for them to wonder where this might end. It might end with nothing, or it might end with something quite serious, and so you can't really ever dismiss that.
That's a good word. I'm not dismissing it. When you see the scenes, for instance, in Dagestan, that is somewhere where you have a bone-deep... My grandmother's from quite close to there. She's from about 150 miles south of there. She's Jewish
down by the Caspian.
She's, Azeri Jew. So, that is somewhere where you go, wow, that's pretty extraordinary to see. But I also think we do need to take... I'm not dismissing those concerns. It's a really important point you make. I'm not dismissing those concerns. You do have to take a step back and say, is Britain still a tolerant country which is very fair, honest and just to people from the non-majority culture, to minorities? Yes, it is. I'm not dismissing anyone, but I think some perspective is needed. Yeah,
but hold on, because that's all well and good in normal times, but these are not normal times. There is a conflict going on, as we've just been discussing, and we're just seeing some scenes on there. So just to give you some context for this, so this is the campaign against anti-Semitism. What they're saying, there's been a 1,300% increase in anti-Semitism. They're saying that they have done a survey of British Jews, which has shown us that nearly 69% to almost 70% of British Jews are saying that they are now less likely to show visible signs of their duties. Apparently, this same survey says that half of British Jews have considered whether or not they need to leave the UK due to anti-Semitism. So whilst I agree with what you're saying, if life was normal, life is not currently normal in a lot of ways. You've got these big pro-Palestine marches happening every single weekend. You've got people within those marches that are very anti-Semitic. You've got people wandering the streets with Hamas-style headbands on. You've got Nazi symbols on placards. So these are not normal times. So in these times, I find it quite staggering that you would think that a lot of British Jews wouldn't be terrified.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying it is still a fantastic place to not be from the majority culture, and I think we forget that.
Yeah, but that's no consolation, is it? If you've got people on the streets chanting for your death, pretty much, if you're Jewish.
So let's look at a few points you've made. In terms of the campaign against anti-Semitism, I think, this is my personal view, Israel has a position, an understandable position, where they really want as many European Jews to go back to Israel as possible for two reasons. Firstly, it is their country, it's their homeland. Secondly, because of demographic concerns that there aren't simply enough Israelis to maintain this country going forward. And that has been a strategic long-term imperative for Israel, that we'd like European Jewry to come back to Israel, to return to Israel, to do Aliyah.
Right.
That's one part. And I think to some extent there is an intentional desire and motivation to instill fear in European Jews as a result. Now, are European Jews at the same time...
On whose part?
I think certain interest groups. I think certain ultra-nationalist interest groups in Israel want to encourage as many European Jews to go to Israel as possible. That's my... I mean, I've read about that. That's what I've learned. At the same time, you clearly have a massive increase in anti-Semitism across Europe. You have the targeting of Jewish people, not just in Europe, but also in North America too. And I think, actually, the solution is... I don't know if you want to talk about this, because there was this awful story in East London where they won't be putting out the menorah for Christmas. Which
I've seen that, yeah.
Which is just appalling.
Well, it is atrocious, and whoever's taken this decision should retake it and reverse it.
It's disgusting.
Well, it's giving in to... It's giving in, essentially, to menace.
Can I just I'll just say what the story is, for people who aren't aware. You've got this menorah every year in Havering, East London. It goes out during the sort of the festive period. I say that because, of course, it's not Christmas, it's Hanukkah. It goes out over the festive period, and they aren't doing it this year because there are worries that it will be damaged, destroyed, God knows what. Now, they're saying they don't want to inflame community tensions. Well, I think that's absolutely appalling because, look, when little black children wanted to go to all-white schools in Alabama in the 1950s, that inflamed community tensions. The point is, those communities were wrong. So I think there's a twofold approach here for me, Michelle. On the one hand, British Jews should be absolutely proud of what and who they are. They should absolutely not be intimidated by what's going on. There absolutely is a rise in anti-Semitism, of course. what's going on in Havering is appalling. We need political leadership which doesn't cower to these kinds of impulses. But I do really want to remind our viewers, Britain remains a tolerant, generally high trust, generous and just country. And I really do get worried when people keep on doing us down like this.
But I'm trying to unpick what you're saying, because there are a lot of Jewish people I know as well, because a lot of people get in touch with this programme. So I do speak to people every day about this. And a lot of Jewish people are frightened. A lot of, you see, there was that school the other day, that Jewish school where it's got all this red paint chucked on it and all the rest of it. And people are afraid. And people will see this chant from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. People will interpret that chant as meaning a one-state solution, which basically means the eradication of Jewish people in and around those areas.
We're talking about two separate things here, though, aren't we? We're talking about
not really.
No, we are.
No, not really.
Yeah,
because it's in this atmosphere, particularly the atmosphere of the demonstrations, which have been repeated very unusually. I can't think of any other occasion where a demonstration for a cause has been repeated weekly on the streets of the capital over and over again.
Well, I can. Student demonstrations, I participated in them 10 years ago, but yes.
I think it's not really parallels. And I think that this has undoubtedly created particular worry. And the sort of incidents which Michelle described of a school being splashed with paint and abusive faith, the authorities really do need, it seems to me, to act very strongly against this kind of thing, to detect and charge and prosecute.
I completely agree.
The culprits in a way. I don't see this happening, and I think there does need to be much more sign from the authorities in the criminal justice system that there are limits which it simply will not go beyond, and things which it simply will not tolerate. I haven't seen enough of that. I'm not in favour of stopping people from saying things, but my goodness, I'm against people being allowed to get away with throwing paint at Jewish schools and intimidating human beings, and particularly children, in that way. That you have to stand up against without reservation, and I don't think there's been quite enough of that myself, which is why I'm worried about this decision to take down or not put up the menorah for Hanukkah. It just seems to me to be a retreat ultimately of authority, and authority shouldn't retreat when it sees these things. It should advance.
Yeah, and I've got to say, I don't think the two things are separate. To your point, your response to me, I think they're very much linked. And I do think that it's great if a Jewish person feels safe. Absolutely wonderful. I've got nothing against that. But I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the collection of Jewish people that absolutely don't feel safe, and that do feel that people wandering the streets chanting, they would interpret it as a one-state solution. They would interpret meaning basically get rid of all the Jews. That is intimidating and frightening a lot of people.
I think, look, these are separate things. That's the point.
I don't
so
see how you think
if you want to talk about the legitimacy of that and the trade-offs between freedom of expression,
but how are they two separate things? We're talking about whether or not people feel safe.
Because that's not illegal. That's not illegal.
I didn't say it was illegal.
No, but throwing red paint at a synagogue, or making menaces, or supporting a prescribed terrorist organisation, that is illegal. That is stuff.
But I'm not saying it's illegal.
But these are separate things,
you don't
right?
just get intimidated and feel frightened based on what's illegal and what's not.
No, but the point is the state can be doing things, and it's not doing them, as Peter just said, about this. So I think, why don't we start there, and rather than have an abstract conversation about a chant relating to foreign policy decisions about a country thousands of miles away?
I find this fascinating that you think it's a random abstract. There's no connection between people in their tens of thousands making chants that relate. Many would interpret. It is an abstract
debate, though, because it's about freedom of expression versus incitement. It is about, that's absolutely an abstract debate, whereas somebody throwing red paint on a synagogue is not abstract. They've broken the law.
Yeah, I don't want to go around in circles, but I just feel, and I know, I don't just feel it, I know, because I hear people every day getting in contact with me. There's a lot of people feel frightened, they feel afraid when they're seeing those chants, and you might not, and you might know a lot of people that don't feel afraid, and that's wonderful, but a lot of people do. And just because it's not illegal, and just because it's within the confines of free speech, doesn't mean that makes people feel any less intimidated or any less unsafe or anything like that. Anyway, I'll throw it open to you guys. I'm sure you have opinions on that. gbviews@gbnews.com.